Bonsoir à tous.
Good evening, all.
Bonsoir.
Good evening.
Comme prévu, c'est notre rendez-vous
So,
pour vous commenter
as
le
usual,
chiffre d'affaires du
this
troisième
is our
trimestre.
meeting to comment on the turnover for the third quarter. It's going to be a bit shorter tonight, so that you're able to ask all the questions you want to. And on this topic, there's a tab which is called Chat on the webinar that allows you to just speak to us directly. And there's a questions tab where you can ask your questions either in French or in English, and we'll answer at the end of the presentation. So, Patricia, over to you. I'm going to talk about staff. So, just to say, we're in the new premises of Opaline, a new studio. Our webinar salon. So the decor has changed a little bit, as you'll see, compared to usual. So we want to just point that out. And we have a translation live in English too, which is provided by Neil Draper. That's me. So we're going to start this webinar with the head count. So we want to thank our staff for their loyalty. Later on, Guillaume will talk to you about the project that we have to reward our employees for their loyalty. So 781 people. That's a stable situation. Recruitment is obviously on a downward trend, with the trend in terms of business of our different subsidiaries. Now we're going to move on to the next slide. So our turnover at the end of these 3 months to constant scope, we've got growth of 0.8%, and then we've got DPI, which work in plastic pipework, and they will be bringing turnover of 33 million, and that gives us a consolidated turnover which is up 8.7% to the end of September. So the two main channels, retail and pro. So retail is DIY, and in particular generators for DIY superstores, of course. We've got a decrease of 1.1% in this turnover to the end of the quarter, and that's linked to Mecafer and Domac mostly, because of the market for generators. Because last year, in August, September, we had very strong sales of generators, and in connection with the risks of electricity cuts in France, but also the situation in Ukraine. And so Mecafer and Domac had some amazing results, and of course that unusual exceptional event didn't reoccur this year. So then for the pro channel, those are activities in building, industry and water, swimming pools with AELO. So we've got a growth of 1.3% in turnover here. We want to point out two key points. Concerns new housing, two subsidiaries concerned by Thermador and PB Tube, and they've had drops in turnover linked to market trends for new housing, the new housing market. Guillaume will talk to you about that later. The second is energy renovation, which concerns Isocell and Thermador, who had great turnover levels, and of course demand is less this year, and well, in spite of a promising second quarter for Thermador, turnover was sharply down in the third quarter. You've got all the information in our letter to shareholders, number 111, on the performance of all the subsidiaries. And the figures for Thermador show a drop over the second and third. And Guillaume will talk to us about funding from the energy renovation market, especially the energy renovation scheme from the government. Now we're going to talk about the slide on organic growth per quarter. Gives you a historical perspective. You see that the second and third quarters are down, which wasn't the case in the first quarter. But I would remind you that in the third quarter of 2022, we had turnover growth of 14.1%, so that's enormous, and of course coupled with that higher inflation. So it puts it into perspective, this drop in Q3. This also shows the weight of our different activities, and we've got seasonal activity, of course. And we've got organic growth, and they take into account these seasonal discrepancies. Guillaume, over to you. So, news from the MaPrimeRénov' funding mechanism. You know that this scheme is paid by the ANAH, which is the Housing Improvement Agency, and we heard about problems a quarter ago about the problems with their payment periods. There has been improvement, but it's still taking a long time. So the actors who are involved in energy renovation in our group are affecting our subsidiaries, because of course those actors are suffering. But once again, this has affected Thermador and Isabel, as discussed earlier. The swimming pool market, we estimated a drop in the market of 15%, but our subsidiary AELO, because it's a very young company and its dynamic team, did not suffer as much as the market did generally. The price phenomenon, and measured at the end of the third quarter, we've got an increase in prices passed on to the customers of around 7.2%. So you see this measure taken at the end of the first semester, where we were at 8.2%, and we see that it's declining. And this the inflation effect is, of course, falling as inflation falls. And we see that continuing in Q4 and into 2024. Just to remind you that last year we had an impact of the increase passed on to customers of 10.8%, so it was much higher. So, new housing in France, unfortunately, the trend continues to get worse, both in terms of planning permission that is authorized and the start of new house builds, houses, projects that are already started. So both those curves are going down, continues to go down. I'll just remind you the turnover of the group that is directly impacted by new housing
part du chiffre d'affaires impacté par les logements neufs, mais en consolidé que de 10%.
is only 10% in consolidated terms. So
Quand même, maîtrisé.
it's a controlled situation as far as we are concerned. Then a word about the statistics from Coidis, which groups all our customers in heating and cooling. They measured for the second time this year a negative figure for turnover. So we see for a period of 2 years a continued decline in these figures for new housing, but also, of course, it affects renovation too. A look at the industrial markets with the Purchasing Managers Index in France continues to be under 20, which indicate under 50, sorry, which indicates a downward trend. It's actually got a bit worse over the last few months, and in the Eurozone, the situation is practically the same. Patricia, could you have a word about our working capital requirement in terms of stock and customer payment terms, DSO? So, in terms of stock, it's one of the indicators that we look at carefully. So, stock are relatively stable because we're at 195 days compared to 200 days in October 2022. So our purchasing teams are working in a complex environment because they need to be able to ensure the delivery of the products to the customers in terms of quality, of course, but faced with declining levels of sales and a disparity, of course, between the different subsidiaries. So we think that's a positive situation because we continue to be aligned with market demand. We see that as being a good stock control. In terms of customer payment terms, we also, this is one of the indicators we keep an eye on too. To the end of June, there's no real exposure at the end of this quarter to any worrying customer accounts, and we'll continue to monitor that to ensure that the situation does not get worse, and that's one of part of the work of the customer accounts department, and they will continue to keep an eye on their exposure. It's part of our day-to-day vigilance on these markets. A few words about our prospects. It looks fairly negative. We're going to explain why. First of all, as Patricia mentioned, the base effect is a difficult context compared to the last quarter. We'd already at that time we were on a progression of 15.9%. So again, we want to bring that into perspective a little bit. In this difficult climate we're in, of course, that's the base effect. There's an additional effect, which our subsidiary DPI, which arrived in the group at the end of October. So it's 2 months, yes. Not 2 years, 2 months. Part of the fourth quarter. And since the beginning of the year has been particularly exposed to deflation and there's a drop in turnover, which is greater than the general average for the group. So we've had this prudent comment on the prospects for the fourth quarter. So new housing in 2024, to to be quite honest, we can't expect any major improvements in 2024. And if there is any improvement, it will be in 2025. MaPrimeRénov', on the other hand, should boost a number of our products and help a number of our subsidiaries, because I would remind you, the Prime Minister Elizabeth Borne in July indicated that the budget will be increased to 4 billion euros in 2024 compared to 2.4, and we've had a more recent announcement from the government whereby this MaPrimeRénov' budget is going to go up to 5 billion. So that's the idea, is to promote global renovation of buildings. That means that it's to avoid one-shot renovations where you just change a heat pump and don't work on the basic problem of thermal leakage, for example. So this budget is clearly targeting at low-income households to deal with this problem of thermal leakage, because it's posing a real problem for those households. So energy saving certificates, no big change here, especially for 2024. Big change in 2025 with an increase in 50% of the obligations for the energy suppliers, and from 2026 there will be a doubling of the current obligation. So in 2026 there should be more than 10 billion by 2026 in terms of budget. We'll also continue to follow regulations on drinking water and also grey water. You know that the public authorities have announced 53 measures to avoid wasting water in France. At the end of August, a first decree came out on the reuse of water, which is considered not sufficiently precise for the moment, but it deals with wastewater, retreated wastewater, and rainwater. And we have interest, of course, in those sectors. And those two topics obviously need to be divided into two. So we're working on shedding more light on that, so that, for example, the recuperation of rainwater could be used for domestic uses, for example, toilets and washing machines. Jetly is working on those topics and has all the equipment it needs that these sort of projects need in houses for the recuperation and reuse of water. Industry and industry internationally remain fairly dark in terms of prospects, linked to the indicators we showed you before and the economic context that we're going through. So industry in France and internationally, we don't imagine any tremendous growth, but we're hoping to work better with our bigger customers in order to gain market share. In terms of prices, so our estimate for prices passed on to customers is around 6%. For 2024, that's going to go down. There will be an impact of price rises from 2023, of course, which will run over into 2024. But this impact is going to reduce. It's difficult to predict exactly what that impact will be, but in any event, it will be much less than 6%. I think we're pretty certain about that. And finally, we want to talk about this project that we have to distribute some free shares to shareholders in Thermador Groupe. The free share plan has two main objectives. firstly, to
récompenser la
continue to reward
de nos salariés
the loyalty of
et
our
également des clients de société.
employees,
Et deux, augmenter et
and
atteindre
secondly,
l'objectif,
increase
au niveau
the
de la participation des
participation, the shareholding of employees in the capital of the group.
Aujourd'hui, quand on fait la
Today,
somme de ce que détiennent les salariés actifs et retraités,
when we-
nous sommes à 7%.
when we
Et
add
vous
up
savez,
employees and retired employees, we're at around 7%, but we want to get that level up to 8% of shareholding amongst employees and retired employees. So it's a major announcement, we realise, and it concerns all stakeholders. The important thing for our shareholders is to have a good motivation. Is that the shareholders have more committed workers and more loyal workers in the group, and the employees will have to just respect a number of conditions. They have to be in the company, in the group, for 3 years, and they would have to keep the shares for a certain time. I think there'll be questions about that about this project, which is just a project for the moment, and it will be activated to present some very precise resolutions, which will be presented at our annual general meeting on April the 2nd, 2024. So we've left a lot of time for the questions. We've got 40 minutes from that, and the first questions are coming in. That's no surprise. And concerning the share price, what's our feeling about it? We're very transparent about our figures for the third quarter. We've not talked about the profitability of the group. Maybe there's been an exaggerated interpretation of the impact that this potentially negative Q4 could have on the profitability of the group, which can be partly explained by this what I think is a very strong correction on the Thermador share price. I think the correction was down to a very high volume of shares traded, 76,000 shares transacted Friday. That shows that investors are moving out, because we've seen lots of blocks moved, lots of share blocks move, and some investors are taking the opportunity to sell. Those who can join us today, buy shares with us today, we're making a good operation in the medium to long term. We prefer shareholders who are there for a few years, over the long term. I think it's a 10-year sort of 20 investment, because it can also be extremely beneficial after 5 years. I looked at the curve which shows the performance of the share compared to the CAC 40. If we compare over 10 years, we are really much higher than the average. Over a period of 5 years, we're almost at this level of the CAC 40 in terms of the average performance. But we have to keep that in mind, that this performance has been good over the past 5 years. That's what I can give as my comment on that. There's no need to panic, and those who don't need their money immediately, I think you do well to keep hold of those shares. So, guidance for 2024.
Alors, vos prévisions pour 2024 sont vraiment pessimistes.
Your predictions
La
for
situation est-elle inquiétante à ce
2024
point?
are very pessimistic.
Je
Is
vous
it
invite
as worrying as
à
that?
écouter les informations
I would invite you to listen to
tous
the
les
news
jours et vous voyez que la
every day,
situation
and you
géopolitique et
you see the
économique
geopolitical
est
situation
préoccupante.
is
Donc,
quite
ça
concerning.
nous amène
That's
à
the
la
least we can do.
prudence.
We need to be cautious, I
On va pas
think.
faire des prévisions, hein, puisque vous le savez, c'est pas la tradition
We're
du
not
podcast.
making forecasts. It's not
Mais
our
en tout
habit.
cas,
But
je
in
donne
any
mon
event,
avis sur ce qu'on peut faire sur le chiffre d'affaires à court terme et en
It's-
2024.
we have to look at what we could do with turnover in the short term,
Je trouve que vous êtes
2024.
un peu sévère vis-à-vis de notre communication.
And I think
J'ai
you're a bit.
simplement dit que nous serions en retrait sur le T4 avec un
All I'm saying is that we are going to be down a bit on Q4,
et nous avons dit que
and
l'année
we said
2024
that 2024
serait difficile.
would be difficult, a difficult year.
Précis, elle sera particulièrement difficile sur le premier trimestre.
It will be particularly difficult in the first quarter
Trimestre de
because
l'année
the
2023,
first quarter of 2023
extrêmement fort.
we were still
Je ne me dis pas
benefiting from the high levels. I'm not very pessimistic, no, I wouldn't say that, but I'm realistic
qui va être difficile pour le groupe Thermador.
for a year that's going to be difficult for Thermador Group, but also for many others. We have to remember that at the beginning of 2023 was a year of growth, and that we knew that 2023 was going to be difficult, and 2024 would also be difficult. And if we look at the new build, new house building market, we knew, looking at that curve that we saw earlier on, with the difference between the planning permission and the building starts, there was such a gap that we knew it was coming. We started to talk about this possible correction of the activity from the third quarter 2022. The post-COVID euphoria could not continue eternally.
Donc en fait, moi j'ai une question de la part de Renner.
A question from Renner.
Major price discounts actions by our customers or competitors. Est-ce qu'en fait on constate sur le marché des remises importantes sur les prix de la part de nos clients ou de la part de nos concurrents?
Are we seeing big price drops from our customers or our competitors? From our customers, we can say for major retails from retail who want us to give price drops, and that's part of the negotiations that we have with them. But 2023 prices were decided on the basis of 2022. We passed them on in 2023, and for the moment we do give some discounts to our customers, and we work from a base tariff, and we work on each customer on a case-by-case basis. But we remain on the same trends of price that we planned for 2023. So in terms of our customers, we don't see.
On avait vu des hausses très significatives en fait en début 2023, plus importantes que ce que nos filiales avaient rétrocédé au marché.
We saw them, our customers in 2023, giving more discounts than we did, but there's no real adjustment on prices. 2024 may be different, and maybe the negotiations will have a result. We talked about DPI. We talked about DPI prices going down, but they seem to be going up again now, which is reassuring. But DPI is a bit different. They're not prices that we send to a customer that's valid for a certain period. They're dependent on the different projects. We've got a question from Matt.
Alors je ne sais pas si Nine en fait voit les questions en anglais. Ça j'ai pas l'information.
Matt.
Pas forcément. Donc c'est le délai, c'est en fait notre faiblesse. La faiblesse, ça concerne essentiellement cette question, ça concerne essentiellement Thermador, donc notre
So this is about
rappelons-le,
the weakness in Thermador,
a été en forte croissance sur les 3 dernières années et
which
en
was
lien avec la
showing
rénovation
growth
énergétique.
over the past
Donc,
3
effectivement,
years.
la question c'est quelle est la part de la
And the question is,
faiblesse
what is
de
the
Thermador,
how much of the weakness in Thermador
en lien
subsidiary
avec les délais
is connected to the
de
delays in the
MaPrimeRénov'.
MaPrimeRénov'
Et
payments,
versus en fait
or
la faiblesse du
in
marché,
relation to the weakness of the
macroéconomique.
market overall,
L'exposition,
macroeconomically.
alors je vais interpréter ça
So,
différemment.
exposure,
L'exposition
I'm going to
de
interpret it
Thermador
differently. The exposure of
sur les
Thermador
produits particulièrement,
to
aidés par,
products helped by MaPrimeRénov'
est de l'ordre de 40 millions, mais ça, vous
is
pouvez-
around 40 million.
on peut le voir quand on regarde la progression de
But
Thermador.
you can see the
sur les
progression
3 dernières
of Thermador in the last 2 or 3 years.
C'est une façon de répondre à cette question.
That's one way of answering this question. If
Aide s'arrêtait,
tomorrow aid was to stop, grants were to
ça
stop,
pourrait avoir un impact très
it
significatif
could
sur
have a
Thermador.
very substantial impact for
Pour
Thermador.
rappeler,
However,
les pouvoirs
I would
publics
remind you that the public
ont
authorities
confirmé,
have
reconfirmé
confirmed and confirmed
vouloir,
again that they are
diminuer,
going to
l'impact,
that they want to
bâtiments
reduce the
sur l'empreinte CO2.
impact of buildings on carbon footprint. So there's no reason that they would reduce or stop these grants. Again,
Est-ce qu'en fait on a vu une reprise des paiements de la
do you think that the increased government subsidiaries from MaPrimeRénov' can make up for some of the weaknesses in the next year or two?
Donc ça c'est un élément important et ça a commencé à
So
revenir un peu à la
started to
normale
come
à
back,
partir de juin, juillet.
started to go back to normal more or less in June, July. So
Voilà,
we've
il faut que
understood
ça
that
se remette aussi en fonctionnement, que les dossiers de financement soient traités,
that
que les chantiers démarrent. Donc tout ça, ça met un petit
the
peu de temps à
MaPrimeRénov'
démarrer,
mechanism
mais
started to get better
on a
again.
vu,
We did see a slight improvement.
améliorer ses process et donc
The ANA improved their processes and the financial fluidity seemed to be improving
à partir de juin. Il faut
from
savoir que
June
le
onwards. But it's important to understand
financement
that
de
the
financement, c'était plutôt grippé,
mechanism
à partir de décembre,
seemed to
janvier,
seize up
vraiment très
in
fortement. On
December,
voit
January
que
at the beginning of the year.
là, on a
And now
on
we
ressent
can see
peut-être une baisse de la demande liée à ça et que sur les 4 prochains
over
mois,
the
on va avoir à nouveau
next
une
4 to 6 months, I'm sure we're going to see an improvement in the financial flows from the MaPrimeRénov' scheme. So, given your prudence in terms of 2024,
Alors, historiquement, et c'est quasiment une règle économique,
are we to expect a drop in the margin in 2024,
la marge augmente un petit peu, quand
or
la
do you
dépense
see factors of resilience?
diminue un petit peu.
The margin will be down a bit for sure. It's a question of supply and demand,
La demande est très forte, mais c'est vrai qu'on a tendance à être plus commerçant
but
quand la demande est plus faible.
when demand is down, of course, we have to look at our prices. So that affects the margin, of course. We've got variance of margins, which is linked to the evolution of the business. So the best factor of resilience is the people, the employees. We're a highly devolved organisation and we give responsibility to the subsidiaries, to the local management teams, to all the employees that work there. So it's very successful in defending prices, keeping an eye on costs, and improve the performance of the subsidiaries and therefore of the group, of course. My installer announces a wait of 50 weeks for the reception of my air-to-air heat pump because of the exploding demand with MaPrimeRénov'. Today, the market for heat pumps is down in France. It's known, it's a known quantity. There was an article in the Echo today that talked about this phenomenon. So we're not losing market share. The market was predicted to be with strong growth, but it's dipped, in particular because of the problem of funding from MaPrimeRénov'. You see how important that is. and the stocks of high in Europe, and those delivery times have fallen. So I think you should see another installer or look at a different brand, because you shouldn't be waiting 50 weeks. But I would do note that you're talking about a water-to-water heat pump, whereas the majority of the volume is air-to-water heat pumps. Another question from Matt about MaPrimeRénov' again. Do we think that next year or the year after we'll see growth for Thermador? Because of the MaPrimeRénov', a return to growth for Thermador, basically. It's difficult to say. Medium term, it's difficult. The equipment sold by Thermador will be subject to growth, which will follow the initiatives of the authorities. The question is, will the agency manage to feed the market with this money, with these funds, and will the mechanism, the energy saving certificates, will they also be able to be managed properly? I think that's the question. In any event, the funding potential is there, and we have the partners, the manufacturers who can supply that market. But we do believe that the restart will come fairly quickly. So these are European products, and so Thermador teams are able to work closely with those subsidiaries. And that's one of our market monitoring themes, to understand what the market will want in the future, so as to be able to shift our list of products to be adapted to market demand. And so we're expecting a restart soon. Are we considering increasing prices in 2022? We talked about the inertia in 2023 and 2024. The trend is not an increase in prices in 2024. It's this inflationary period is coming to an end. Just a reminder to explain why it's going down. The European Central Bank is fighting against inflation by increasing borrowing rates, and that slows down the economy, of course. So that's linked, it's mechanical. And everything that happens is fairly logical. But to answer the question, overall, the trend is not an increase in prices in 2024. Are we going to be able to maintain our return on capital employed above 20% in spite of the slight contraction in your business levels and the dilutive effect of DPI? I think that the impact of DPI is going to be to do with the profitability. ROCE for DPI. The DPI is the best in the group. And we knew that when we bought it. The real quality of the company is that it can do a lot of turnover, but without mobilizing capital, because it has no stock. It's an intermediary which organizes direct deliveries of equipment from European depots to users. So the ROCE, from my point of view, won't be harmed by DPI, will be favored by their presence in the group. It's all to do with anticipating the impact comparing ROCE to past periods, but I think it's reasonable, and I think that we are extremely high levels of ROCE, as has always been the case.
cours de Thermador est revenu au niveau de janvier 2021.
So,
Est-ce si grave? Que faire pour le rebooster?
so the share price is back to January 2021 levels. How can we boost it? It wouldn't be a practice that we would get involved in trying to boost the share price. But because we're cautious and reasonable. But I just don't think we should get overexcited about these changes in share prices. A share price that varies a lot over a period of years is not the most important thing. It's important to stand back a bit, take a bit of a long view and look at what's happened over the last 5 to 10 years. And look at the future, which is to do with energy renovation of buildings, where we're really strongly present. The policies in Europe and the essential need in France that we'll have in the future to control our use of water and reuse of water, those all point in the right direction in terms of the health of the company, and we'll certainly see an increase in the share price over time, which in my view at the moment is relatively low, and this could be a good time to buy, as I said earlier on. Question from Jean-Pierre in terms of DPI's turnover. He's done a quick calculation. If you look at the figures at the end of Q3 for DPI, you divide it by 8.5, because 8.5 months, of course. The turnover at the end of the quarter divided by 8.5, multiplied by 11 months, because August is a half month, December is a half month. We get to 42 million. And so where are the 66 million that they've talked to us about? So the correction of DPI's turnover linked to the drops in volume and the drops in prices. We checked with the management team that it's not a question of losing customers, but it's an actual contraction of the market. The important thing is that this drop in business and turnover does not affect profitability too much, and DPI's profitability at the end of the first half was pretty good. So I think
mais tu peux en parler. La question de Jean-Pierre, est-ce qu'on peut s'attendre à un T4
so
extrêmement fort?
Can we expect a very strong Q4 compared to 2022? No, I don't think so. No, Jean-Pierre, I don't think we can expect an exceptional, miraculous Q4. We're talking about DP, yeah, specifically. Of course, there are a number of uncertainties, but we can't expect a jump in turnover in Q4. So there's a question of the complement of price. There was an additional amount of 5 million based on the result, the operating profit, the average operating profit between 22-23. So we looked at this at the BPI team. The turnover wasn't going to be what had been planned, so they revised their budget. They recalculated operating profit result, and so we maintained that add-on of 5 million. The question is there the budget they presented at the end of June, is that going to be met? But I would remind you that in 2022 there was the increase in prices, which is very substantial, and there was a contract that they won
Donc l'activité de DPI,
a project they won in 2022, which actually will appear on the accounts in 2023. So public works projects tend to be very big, so it can give a blips in the turnover graphs. You see, there's very strong variations between 2 years. Question from Thierry about the pool market. Have we had cancellations? No. We just had slowdown, no cancellations of orders, just slowdowns.
Par la conquête de nouveaux clients, ce qui explique pourquoi la baisse du chiffre d'affaires d'Aelo, notre filiale piscine, est moins forte que la baisse du...
And that's, as we said earlier, the drop in turnover Aiello is lower than the market overall, which is 12 to 15% down. Are you going to be able to position yourself on the sector for water recovery, rainwater recovery, processing of wastewater or others for reuse? It's the case with Jetly, but with Spherico too, with their valves. Those are all suitable for these markets. Case of DPI also for the securing of water networks and repair to water networks, so that will help DPI and Spherico too for replacement of valves and replacements of pipe work.
Comme Thermador, on est en fait présent dans un syndicat professionnel pour travailler en fait sur l'évolution des réglementations. Jetly a opéré de la même façon et est présent dans le syndicat professionnel qui est en lien avec
Jetly has joined the professional association that works on market issues such as the recovery of rainwater. So that allows them to work on the product range and follow the trends, changes to regulations. And we think the same, as has been the case in the past for Thermador generally, where we followed the market, the same will be the case for Jetly. So, great idea for the free share. Would it be possible to dilute shareholders? We can buy shares on the market, buybacks. It's quite possible to play on the two schemes when the share price is right and the cash is available. But we'll certainly try to find the best balance between the two, so that all the stakeholders benefit from it. Franck, an employee of the group. How do you see the trends in the DIY market and that of your subsidiaries Mecafar and Audrea? There's an article in the Echo today, in the financial magazine Les Echos, financial newspaper. We used to give you statistics for the DIY market, but there's obviously been a falling out in that market. And Les Echos talked about a progression and a low progression this year and possibly a slowdown next year. After the post-COVID euphoria, there's obviously been a correction and it's only to be expected. This doesn't prevent our subsidiaries from having projects, and obviously these are the cheaper equipment will sell more easily, of course, like taps and bathroom taps. These are things we change occasionally because we need to change them. And we're more likely to change taps than buy a new generator, which of course Mecafer make. So the same applies to high pressure hoses and generators. So obviously this Audrey is more likely to benefit in a difficult period like this because they sell products that are products of necessity. Thierry, the small caps have taken a hit on the stock exchange. Have you observed a decollection or a sellout? So when the market is particularly nervous, investors tend to focus on large caps because it's easier to buy or sell than for mid caps. But I'm a defender of mid caps, as you know, and if you're a long-term investor, it's undoubtedly a good time to buy, to join Thermador and other mid caps. They've showed their worth in the past. Damien, you have signed 2 contracts at the end of 2022 for electricity and gas for 1 year. How do you see prices evolving in 2024? You borrowed 31 million euros over 7 years at a fixed rate to buy DPI. Is it possible to know what rate you paid? No, because our banking partners wouldn't like us to reveal the exceptional conditions under which we negotiated those loans. But very advantageous, I can tell you that much. Can you, Patricia, give us an idea about the electricity and gas contracts, supply contracts for 2024? We signed contracts in the first half year. We waited until October. For 2023, it was up 3.5 to 4 times. And we've got a deal for 2020 for an increase of 40%. We're not going to get back to 2020 prices, that's for sure. But what is clear is that we reviewed the situation in terms of consumption. That seems to have worked really well in the subsidiaries with a drop of consumption with LED lighting, and we've reduced our energy costs as a result. We've got 1 minute, 8 minutes left, sorry. So we've still got questions coming in. So we're going to do quick answers. Jean-Loup, hello Jean-Loup. What about the complementary price for the purchase of DPI and set at a provision for 100% in 2022? We've answered that question. The new laws on land, available land, and the fact of putting in energy producing buildings. Are you on target? So, yeah, we do have a commitment to reduce our consumption by 40% in terms of energy consumption. Yeah, we're working on that topic. We're going in the right direction. We've got the first photovoltaic panels installed in the beginning of 2023 and in Belgium too. And we've started to use tracker solutions, which allows us to generate 48,000 kilowatts per year. And we'll continue to work on those topics. And we're accelerating our work in order to be able to equip each building with the best possible energy saving solutions. What is your M&A strategy for 2024? That means merger and acquisitions. Are we going to buy in or merge in 2024? We don't have any substantial projects in progress. We talked about a project for a minority shareholding in a company which is called SMS Production. The project is still under discussion. Maybe will be a minor acquisition before the end of the year in terms of turnover, not very impactful, and in 2024 there may be opportunities because we want to look towards international opportunities which you don't have today in our group. I can't tell you any more about that at the moment, and you'll understand why in the future, but don't expect any major acquisitions in 2024.
Oui, c'était une expérience assez intéressante qui nous a permis de toucher un public différent.
We had this initiative which got us in touch with different type of shareholders. And we did a webinar, in fact, on the subject. So my local authority tells me my water network is 80% inoperative because of leaks. Is this a good opportunity for you? Yes, water leaks in pipe works. It's a very big market, certainly, but we won't be able to do everything at once. What's expensive in these renovation operations is not necessarily the pipes themselves, but it's all the works around it, i.e. digging trenches, removing old pipe work and installing new pipe work. It's a big cost, of course, so it's obviously it'll be helpful for Sfereco and DPI, of course, but you can't imagine that it's going to explode in a very short space of time. Transport. So transport and distribution valves of other fluids, as that could be of interest to you, maybe gas. Yeah, so Sectoriel do offer solutions for delivery of gas in industrial context, and they're working on that. We also have products that can be used for methanization. So, for example, when you have methanization, for example, in a public tip, or this type of company, the gas has to be transported, and DPI make products which are particularly suitable for methanization. Yes, to answer your question, yeah, we have activity around gas transport, but for the moment it's a fairly small market. Okay, it's 6:58. Sorry, I think we've answered all your questions. I hope that we've reassured you to some extent for the medium to long term about Thermador, and I hope that you've enjoyed this time we've had together. We'll see you for the next webinar, which will be in January, and we'll give you the turnover for Thermador Groupe for 2023. No, we'll do a webinar for that in February, but of course we will communicate the year's results in January, but the webinar will be in February. Thank you to all of you for joining us and all your questions, and we wish you a pleasant evening.